Ausar Thompson, after battling his way back from such a serious medical condition, has now finally had his minutes restriction lifted. He can now play 30-plus minutes in an NBA game. We'll talk about how that impacts Ausar and the Detroit Pistons in today's episode, Locked On Pistons Podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Khahil. You can find me over on Twitter at Khahil. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. If you'd like to watch Pistons games with me and the rest of the Pistons fan base, I'll link down below the playback room where you can come chill and watch the game with all of us. Also, if you want to get more of my content, help support me and the channel, I'll also link down below our Substack where I'm writing articles almost daily for you guys. And we also have a 50% off all subscriptions until the end of March. I'll link that for you guys down below if you are interested in some more content. All right, in today's episode, Tom Gores, we hear from the Detroit Pistons owner. We're going to talk about that a little later. And then also, you're really starting to see how badly the Pistons need Tobias Harris when he's missing, when he's been missing in action the last few games due to some personal reasons. But we're going to start off with what I think is some of the biggest news over the last few days since the Pistons' last game, which is Ausar Thompson is now cleared to play 30-plus minutes. Ausar Thompson, obviously, coming back from the blood clot situation, had to work his way back just to get cleared by the NBA to play again. And then, obviously, missed the entire offseason, missed the beginning of the year, missed training camp, had to get that stamina back, had to work his way back into basketball shape. It's been a it's been a very long process here for Ausar Thompson to work himself all the way back. But now, against the game against Utah, was Ausar Thompson's first time crossing over 30 minutes. He also crossed over 30 minutes against the Los Angeles Clippers. This is huge for Ausar Thompson, and obviously this is huge for the Detroit Pistons because for the number one reason is that how great Ausar Thompson had been playing in limited minutes. The numbers that he was putting up in limited minutes, if he was able to play 30-plus minutes, you would expect those numbers to jump. You would expect this impact to be even larger. Since January 13th, where it seemed like he really started to play well. Since that time, that's 24-game sample. He's shooting 58% from the field. He has 11 points per game, 5.3 rebounds a game, 2.7 assists a game, 2.0 steals a game. And the Pistons, obviously, we've talked enough about the starting lineup, how they are dominating the minutes with Ausar Thompson on the floor. But really, even if you go over the last month or so, where he's really started to pick up his game, those numbers get even better. Over the last 15 games, 13 points a game, 5.5 rebounds a game, 4 assists a game, 2.5 steals a game, and he's shooting 63% from the field. And that's all in just 25 minutes of action. If he was able to play 32 minutes, 33 minutes, 34 minutes, who knows what those numbers would be looking like? I mean, we talk about how well Amen Thompson, and you guys know I'm a big fan of Amen. He is fantastic. But we talk about what Amen's doing over in Houston, the numbers he's putting up. He doesn't have a minutes restriction. He's not doing that in 25 minutes. He's full-on starter. He was towards the top of the league in minutes over the last 6 weeks or so. So that's what Amen's doing, and this is nowhere near a shot at Amen. Amen is fantastic. My point is, now just imagine if Ausar was also able to play those type of minutes. If he was also able to play 30-plus minutes, what kind of numbers he would then be putting up. So I think we're about to start seeing that, and I'm happy for Ausar, and I think Ausar is going to put up even better numbers now that he's going to be able to play 30-plus minutes. The other thing is this. The reason, obviously, we can do 2 + 2 = 4. The reason that they are upping his minutes now and taking the restrictions off is because his stamina is better, because he's feeling better on the court for longer stretches. That will really impact even more so the Detroit Pistons defense. Remember, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Last year, for Ausar Thompson, one of the biggest strengths for him coming out of the draft and then also during his rookie season is it felt like that he had a never-ending engine running nonstop. Like, he had 99 stamina. He could miss a layup at one end, turn the ball over at one end, and then be the first person back down on defense and guard everyone on a possession and not lose a single bar of stamina. Like, that was one of the biggest things about Ausar last year, was what made him so impactful. This year, though, you've been seeing him get more gassed as the games go on, the longer he plays on the court, and that just wasn't happening last year. Now, obviously, that's for, there's a reason for that. We all understand the reason. No one's critiquing him for it. But once he's able to then get to the point where, okay, I'm feeling like myself, I can play for longer stretches, I can give it my all for longer stretches, I still feel like myself, and able to do what I did last year, that will impact the Pistons defense even more so. They will be able to do a lot more things defensively, and Ausar will have an even larger impact for them defensively. But I also want to just look at, not even, this doesn't even so much have to do with just his minutes restriction being lifted. These are just some numbers that I really just wanted to bring up in regards to his Ausar Thompson's play and why Pistons fans should really just continue to be extremely excited now that Ausar Thompson is being given free reign somewhat, I should say. Since January 1st, these are his numbers, okay? These are some in-depth numbers here that I'm really looking forward to seeing. And really, I feel like, really are displaying the different type of basketball we are seeing from Ausar Thompson. Since January 1st, he is in the 86th percentile in the amount of shots he's getting fouled on. He's also in the 91st percentile in non-shooting fouls he's drawing. What that tells me, and we've talked about this on the podcast a lot, he is being just a completely different level of aggressive when it comes to creating his own offense and trying to be a slasher and a scorer at the rim. He's been infinitely better in that regard. That's one of the, again, we'll do the amen comparison because people like to do it. That's one of the key differences coming out of the draft at the time, their time at OTE, is that Amen was a much more aggressive scorer and creative scorer at the rim and slasher, whereas Ausar was more, it's not that he didn't score, he was more reserved. He wasn't as aggressive as his brother as a scorer, which is one of the critiques of Ausar. And you are starting to see him, since January 1st, be much more aggressive consistently on a play-to-play basis as a driver, as a slasher, as a scorer at the rim. Along with this, I obviously want to pull up, give me just a minute, the numbers went away. Can we please apply the filters? Can we please apply the filters, cleaning the glass? Thank you. Okay. So, also, he is in the 61st percentile, if these numbers are correct, and now Clean the Glass can, 72nd percentile. I don't know what was going on with my Clean the Glass, but he's in the 72nd percentile this year at the rim. His rookie year, he was in the 50th percentile. So he's become a much better finisher this year. We all know his athleticism and his ability to just, if he really wanted to, just to dunk on anybody. But he's been much more efficient this year. I mean, he's seen massive jumps. He's seen a massive jump in just what he's shooting from the field this year compared to last year. I mean, at this point, he is shooting nearly 56% from the field this year. Last year, he was below 50% from the field. He's at 48%. This year on all two-pointers, he's at 60%. Last year, he was at 57%. So overall, my point is that it's great to see that Ausar is having that minutes restriction lifted for him because he's playing so much better since January 1st. And him getting more minutes on the floor will lead to him having the type of box scores that will have people outside of Detroit talking about him. He'll start having some crazy stat lines, I think, where you're looking at a 15-point, 7 rebound, 5 assists, 4 steal, 2 block game on like 6 or 7 shots and hit all of them. Like those kind of numbers, they're just like, wow, how is he doing that with such limited sample and without taking up such a high usage? How is he doing that? I think that's what we're heading for. With Ausar, now that he can play 30-plus minutes this year, 30-plus minutes now, and we all know how insanely impactful he's been. And now that he's able to play a lot more, I feel like that impact's going to be felt even more so. And you're going to start to see some crazy stats from Ausar Thompson. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil how you guys feel about Ausar Thompson getting that 30-minute restriction lifted from him. Also, I want to say this. It's not just defensively where getting his stamina back will help. It also will help in this regard of being a driver as a slasher. Doing that stuff takes a lot of energy from you. It takes a lot of energy to repeatedly drive to the rim and then go back on the other end of the floor and be the top-tier defender. If he's able to do that and then still have that energy to be that aggressive scorer on offense, again, it just makes the impact felt even more so. But let me know how you guys are feeling about it. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. When we come back, I want to talk with you guys about Tom Gores, who we did hear from recently this past week in regards to how well the Detroit Pistons are playing. We'll talk about him coming up. Basketball season is heating up, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you can just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. It's easy to use, available in over 30 states, and lets you mix and match projections across different sports. This week, I'm selecting Luka Doncic for more than 25 points and Jason Tatum for more than 8 rebounds. I think that is a pretty good lock to hit for me. PrizePicks makes it simple. You can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds and stay engaged all game long. And every Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25%, giving even more value to your lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Locked On NBA for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so I'm going to write about this. I'll let you guys know this right now. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to go write about this, which you guys can find over at my Substack. I'll link down below. And like I said, we have a 50% off subscription until the end of March. But I'm going to be writing about Tom Gores. You guys will see what we're talking about soon, and just give me a second here. But Omari Sankofa of the Detroit Free Press has an article. You guys can go read it. I want to make sure I am giving him his credit and giving you guys the actual source here. He had some time to talk with Tom Gores 2 days ago, as of right now, 2 days ago, and we got some interesting quotes from Tom Gores, and that has led me to now want to talk about some other things with Tom Gores. But I want to go ahead and read you guys some of the quotes he had, and then we'll take it into the direction that I want to take it. So he was asked about JB Bickerstaff, obviously how he's doing. He says, quote, "You've got to acknowledge JB. JB has brought these guys together. I always knew he had a core that could make things work, but JB's really brought it together, and if there's one word I could say is that they're unselfish. This is a team that is unselfish." Then, obviously, he was asked about Trajan Langdon, and just want to read this quick quote. I don't want to read the entire article, but I want to read this quick quote for you guys, and you guys can check out the rest of it at the Detroit Free Press. But he says, quote, "Trajan, part of the reason I got comfortable bringing him on is because he runs a good process. We have discipline in our decisions, and he's also unselfish. He's brought in a lot of just tremendous people in the front office. He's really skilled too, and he's unselfish himself. We're really developing the rhythm off or both on the court and then in the front office, and we've really got a good culture, and it starts with being unselfish and having a foundation that we can play with or work with." And then lastly, the last thing I want to say, he was asked about the turnaround of the Detroit Pistons, and he says, for that, quote, "It means a lot to me just to be able to deliver to our fans of Detroit. Last year, I apologize to the fans. Also, it just means a lot to see these guys succeeding. We've had such good veterans come in, and we're really fortunate for the veterans that have come in." Now, this is where I want to take these quotes from Tom Gores. First of all, I always like hearing from Tom Gores. I always like hearing from the Pistons owner. I am of the belief that I don't want to see let me change this. The way Tom Gores says he's involved in the Pistons community and the Detroit community, and how often, I feel like he's a bigger face than most owners. Like a lot of owners, you may not even know who they are. With Tom Gores being known and being seen at games or whatever, I would prefer not to never hear from him. So I like it when you do hear from the owner. That's one. But really, this is where I want to take it. There's been a lot of talk, and we've even had to talk about it on the podcast, which I was absolutely shocked by, about whether Troy Weaver deserves credit for what the Pistons have done this year. And I'm not going to get back into that because apparently Troy Weaver, even though he gave Pistons fans the worst season in franchise history, still has fans. So I'm not going to get into that. But if you want to talk about someone who deserves credit, if you want to give someone credit that isn't Trajan or JB, it's Tom Gores. Tom Gores deserves credit. And we'll go through, we talked about this in the offseason, but I'll go through it again. Tom Gores gave Monty Williams a historic head coaching contract. He gave him a long, expensive as bleep contract last offseason. Or I guess you call it 2 off seasons ago now. And then a year afterwards was man enough and was humble enough to admit his mistake 1 year into it and fire him. And not just fire him. You're not just, this isn't 2K. This isn't just, you're not just firing him and then keeping it trucking. Monty's still getting paid. Monty's still going to be getting paid over the next 5 years by Tom Gores. Over $65 million Tom Gores is going to be paying to Monty Williams to not coach the Detroit Pistons. So not only does it take being extremely humble to admit a mistake, it also takes a lot of gall to then pay that much for a mistake while also admitting it was your mistake. It's like a trifecta. That takes a lot, and he was able to do it after 1 year. 1 year in. 1 year in, was able to say, this is the wrong move. We made a mistake. It is what it is. We got to move on. That's number one. Number two is obviously going and getting Trajan. Moving on from Troy, who could not build a team, who was not a good GM, who was not a good team builder, was not a good with asset management, was not a good general manager in the slightest. If you want to give me he was a good scout, I guess, but that's not your job as a GM. Was not a good GM, got Trajan, and there was a lot of talk. Remember this past offseason about there's too many voices in the front office. Is whoever they're going to bring in, are they going to give them enough control to where they feel like they're actually in control? Are they willing to change that? Are they willing to change this culture? Well, guess what? They brought in not a GM, actually. They brought in president of basketball operations. Everything comes down to Trajan. Trajan is the final decision maker on everything. Now, does that mean he doesn't get input and, he doesn't have a room of people that he talks with? Like, obviously, there's a front office for a reason. But in past years, there were certainly some questions about whether Tom Gores enabled this person or that person or this person, or who was allowed to make this, who was allowed to do this, who made this move, all this other stuff with the culture in the front office, which everyone in that front office contributed to, along with Tom Gores. This year, now you got one voice, one sound. You got one guy making all the decisions. Again, he's getting help. He has a room of people that he trusts, that everyone inputs. But at the end of the day, he gave Trajan that president of basketball operations tag, and all the decisions at the end of the day will be Trajan's. All of them. And he makes every single decision. Changes the culture in the front office. It changes the leadership type in the front office. And this is the final thing. To circle back on, also, by the way, he paid Kay Cunningham, which he deserves credit. He made sure that Kay Cunningham got paid. But this is the other thing. And for those of you guys who are, and we have a lot of them, so I don't blame you, but we have a lot of new listeners to the podcast. Actually, this is our largest growth year since I took over the podcast. We've grown a ton this year, and appreciate all of you guys. But for those people who didn't listen to the podcast in the summer or watch the podcast in the summer, let me make this clear. I am not saying this I'm not speculating. I am not making this up. I am not guessing here. The reason why Monty Williams is not the coach of the Detroit Pistons is because Tom Gores. There was a moment this past offseason where it was looking like that Monty Williams may be kept. And the only reason that did not happen was because Tom Gores made sure it didn't happen. That's all I'm going to say about it. So if you like JB Bickerstaff and you think JB Bickerstaff is a great hire, which I think everyone does, if you like the fact that the Pistons moved on, because a lot of people, it seems like evidently that a lot of Pistons fans, and I guess, but a lot of Pistons fans put everything last year on Monty Williams and not much of it on Troy. So if you were not going to be a fan of firing Troy and then just keeping Monty again this year, thank Tom Gores. Thank Tom Gores. And that right there is why he deserves a ton of credit, because he made sure Monty went. He made sure Monty went. And he made sure they had a new coach in town. Remember, when they first brought in Trajan, the reporting was by Shams and all of this was, once they hire their new guy at president of basketball operations or in the front office, they'll allow them to make the decision with Monty. Then, like a week later, you got the report of it's looking like Monty Williams may stay. 2 days later, they fired Monty. I am telling you guys, there is a reason the reporting went in that way, and why after you got the reporting of it looks like Monty Williams may be staying, he was immediately fired. And the reason is because Tom Gores. And again, I'm telling you guys, I'm not speculating. I am telling you guys what I know. So, again, if you are a fan of JB Bickerstaff and what he's done for this team, which you should be, Tom Gores deserves a large part of the credit, as does Trajan, for then going and getting JB and finding the right coach. But moving on from Monty, that's a lot of that goes to Tom. So, you want to talk about somebody that deserves credit for this year that's not in the front office anymore, that's not a coach, that's not a player. If you want to give credit to somebody, give it to the owner. Because he put his money where his mouth is. He ate the money, still paying the money, got rid of the guy, and acknowledged publicly that he messed up and was wrong, while also then paying for his mistake, literally, financially. Look, I know people will say, well, that's what he's supposed to do. But a lot of owners just would not do that. You got owners trading away pieces from contending teams because of how cheap they are. Tom not only paid for his mistake, but is still going to be paying for that mistake for 5 years and had to acknowledge publicly, I messed this up. Because everyone knows about Monty really being a Tom hire or being someone that Tom really pushed for. And then to be able to do that a year later, you get respect from me for being a man enough and humble enough to do everything that comes with admitting that mistake. So, again, like I said, is there someone you want to give credit to? Tom Gores, that's who I'd give credit to. But let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil how you guys feel about Tom Gores. Does he deserve credit? How much credit does he deserve? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Khahil. When we come back, Tobias Harris has been missed in his absence. You're really starting to see just how valuable Uncle T, which they call him, is for Detroit. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can now place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment in the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. In this offseason, during this past offseason, I should say, there were a lot of fans that were just not happy about getting Tobias Harris. There were a lot of fans that just were extremely angry that they got Tobias. We don't need to rehash that whole thing. Just to say fast forward to now, I think a lot of people understand why Tobias is so important and why they went out and got Tobias. Obviously, he's been playing infinitely better over the last month or so. He's really stepped it up. Excuse me. His play has been much better, basically is what I'm saying. But over the last 2 games, he's been missing against the Clippers, and he's been missing against Utah. And you could get away with it against Utah because obviously Utah is Utah. And they didn't play Lauri Markkanen, and they sat a few of their, the few good players that they actually do have over in Utah. But against the Clippers, I think you really saw how much they missed Tobias. Also, over the last 15 games, 17 points a game, 5.3 rebounds. He's shooting 55% from the field and 91% from the free throw line, or 90% from the free throw line. So he's been efficient. He's scoring a lot more. He's being that secondary scoring option for the Pistons. They've desperately needed it. But in this game against the Clippers, I mean, Tobias's presence was insanely felt. His absence, I should say, was insanely felt for two reasons. One, this forced Ausar Thompson to go up and play the 4, and then they played a really small lineup of Cade, Malik, THA, and Ausar to try to keep that spacing. Malik has not looked the same as a starter as he is off the bench. He's much more suited off the bench. He has been much better as a 6-man. He has been much more impactful as a 6-man. In the games in which he started, he just hasn't had that same level of impact. So that gives one of your best scorers, one of your best players, one of your most impactful players thrown off his rhythm to where he's not impacting the game the same. So now that already puts you at a disadvantage. That's first. Second, I have to assume that this is why we saw Ausar Thompson not on James Harden. But later in the game, Ausar was not guarding James. I have to assume the reason they didn't do this was because they considered Ausar a 4 and didn't want to put Schroeder or another small guy on a bigger guy. So they had to put Ausar on the bigger guy in Bogey or whoever else they had out there. I still would have put Ausar in Harden, but I have to assume that's why that happened. If you have Tobias, they would have put Tobias on Bogey, and Ausar would have been on James Harden. So that's the other thing. Another reason why Tobias' absence is felt so much is because Simone Fontecchio is honestly having some of the worst minutes of his career and has just flat out gotten worse. It feels like he's getting worse as the season goes on. In this game against the Clippers, he was 1 of 4, 0 of 3 from deep, 2 points. This is a dude who was shooting above 40% for the Pistons last year from beyond the arc. This is a dude who is supposed to be known for his shooting. You guys know what he's shooting on the year from deep? Shooting 31% from deep. He's shooting 31% from deep on the season. He's shooting 38% on the season from the field. You guys want to know something else? He's averaging the same amount of assists and turnovers. He and Simone has not been he is not a good defender either. Simone, what he was supposed to bring to this team was his shooting. And having to play him 15 minutes is honestly a death knell. That's where we've gotten to at this point. We're in March. It's been like this all year. If Tobias was healthy, I would almost, actually not almost, I would. I don't know if JB's going to do it, but I would. If Tobias was healthy, I just would not play Simone any longer. I would go to that 9-man rotation. I'd move Simone out of the rotation and just split the 4 minutes between Tobias, Ron Holland. That's what I would do. I would rather do that than give Simone Fontecchio minutes because of how bad Simone has been. And that's who's playing in place of Tobias Harris. Along with having to mix and match your lineup now and not put guys in their best positions, you're having to play Simone 15 minutes, and I would rather just not do that at this point. And also, I mean, we've mentioned this on the podcast a ton as well. Tobias is the only actual power forward, the only actual modern NBA 4 on this team that can actually space the floor and has some of that scoring at the 4 position with that size and length. So when you don't have that, the Pistons go back to kind of looking like how they have the last few years when they're trying to find somebody that isn't actually a 4 and forcing them at that position, and they just can't play it the same as Tobias can and doesn't have the same kind of impact. So whatever Tobias is going through, I hope he can make it back by this weekend because the Pistons need him. If not, so be it. Hopefully whatever he got going on personally is, he ends up okay, like he's all right and all that. But they do need him, so hopefully he can get back. Hopefully whatever's going on is not too serious, and he can be back as soon as possible because the Pistons need him, and they won't be able to make this last run to try to get to the 5th seed, to try to get to the 4th seed without Tobias if he's missing critical games. So we'll see what happens. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. Leave us a 5-star review, whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on. Hit the link down below if you want to join the playback room and watch the Pistons games with all of us. If you want to read some articles and some more content from me daily, I'll put the link down below as well to my Substack. We have a 50% off offer until the end of March. I'll link that down below for you guys as well. And until next time, I will see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, everybody, peace out.